Hey everybody, how's it going today? Welcome to this video for Business Math and Calculators. This is the video for Module 56, which deals with bonds. So we are going to tackle a few questions associated with interpreting a bond quote and doing different calculations for costs and closing costs and different things like that. So we'll go ahead and jump into the problems and we'll take it from there. All right, so here we go with some example problems associated with bonds and bond quotes. So here we go with sample problem number 1. Here we have a bond quote in the table there. And what we want to do is answer a series of questions based on the information that is found in the quotation. So the first question we want to ask is for part A, what is the stated annual interest for the bond? Now there's no calculation involved in this, it's just a matter of finding the information in the bond quote. And when you want to find the annual interest rate, that is in the title or the name of the bond. It's that second number after the bond name. So in this case, it was Farwell, 4.25, and then 28. 4.25 is the interest rate. Okay, so for part A, fairly simple. The interest rate is 4.25%. Okay. Now, for part B, we want to figure out when does the bond mature. Again, remember that a bond is basically a company borrowing money. So when you purchase a bond, you're kind of loaning money essentially to them. And so at some point they have to pay that money back. So that's when the bond matures. Again, that information is found in the title of the bond, and that is the second number that appears. So Farwell 4.25, 28. 28 is the year that the bond matures. So for part B, the year is 2028. Again, no calculation required on this one. All right, now part C, we want to calculate what the cost of the bond was on the previous day of trading. All right, so when we look at our bond quote, the closing cost, that tells us essentially what the value was today. We have to use the net change to figure out what it was the previous day. So again, what the net change in this case means, because it's positive, means that today's closing price went up from the previous day. So to find the previous day, we just do the opposite of whatever sign is on the net change value. So we're going to take 101.75 minus 1.250, and that's going to tell us what the closing cost was on the previous day. So in this case, 100.50. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to figure out is, for part D, how much does it cost to actually purchase some bonds? Now, a couple things that you have to remember when you're purchasing bonds is bonds are always based on $1,000 increments. So if you purchase a bond, you're purchasing a $1,000 bond. All right. So if you purchase 20 of them, you have to account for that when you are making that purchase. Now the catch is where does the price close relative to, the $1,000? Remember that the closing cost, in this case 101.75, what you need to do is you kind of need to think about that as like a percentage. Okay, so right now, because the closing price is at 101.75, rather than the 20 bonds costing you $20,000, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because the price is up. All right, so what you do to complete this calculation, number one, is you're going to multiply the 20 bonds times $1,000 per bond, and then make sure you convert that closing cost value by moving the decimal point over 2 spaces. Again, kind of treat it like a percentage. So when all said and done, when you go to purchase this, you're going to be purchasing the $20,000 in bonds for $20,350. Okay, because the price is a little bit high. That means you're paying a little bit more than what the actual bonds are going to cost you. Now, the next question is you want to figure out how much interest are you going to earn on these bonds. Okay, how much interest do you earn per $1,000 bond? That's pretty straightforward. What you need to do is you need to look at what the interest rate is and do some quick multiplication. So each bond is worth $1,000. So the interest rate is 4.25%. So convert that into a decimal and multiply. On each bond, we're going to earn $42.50. And so that's the interest that we earned per bond. So there you go. Again, the trick with bonds is remembering that they're based on $1,000 per bond. And then the other trick is remember that when you look at the closing value, the closing costs, you got to treat that like a percentage when you think about it at 100% being corresponding to like the $1,000. Things that are above 100 mean you're spending a little bit more money. If it's below 100, you're spending less money to purchase those kinds of those bonds in this situation. So be kind of careful there. All right, now sample problem number 2. What we want to do is look at a bond and look at some of the values associated with that. In particular, we want to ultimately calculate the current yield. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what's the total annual interest on a bond. Okay, that has an interest rate of 8.5%. And again, what we want to notice is that the selling price is at 115, and we have 5 bonds that we're talking about. Okay, so for part A, to calculate the total interest, remember it's $1,000 per bond times 5 bonds, so that's 5,000 times the annual interest rate. That will tell you how much interest these 5 bonds will earn, $425. Okay. Now, if you want to go ahead and purchase these 5 bonds, we have to figure out what that purchase amount is. So to do that for part B, what we're going to do is we're going to take again $1,000 times the 5 bonds. Remember that the selling price, the cost, is like a percentage, so multiply by 1.15. To purchase these 5 bonds, it's actually going to cost us more than $5,000. It's going to cost us $5,750. Okay. Now, if we want to figure out the yield, what we want to figure out is, based on what we're spending and the interest that we're earning, how much are we actually going to make? Okay, what's our return essentially on this? So what we do to calculate that is you take the amount of interest that you are earning. So again, this goes back to part A, $425. Divide that by how much you had to pay for the bonds, the $57.50. That'll give you a decimal that you can multiply by 100 to turn into a percent. And so in this case, because the bonds are a little more expensive than $5,000 per bond, our rate of return is a little bit less than the actual interest rate. In this case, it is 7.4%. All right, so there you go. There's a couple of quick problems associated with bonds. Again, just another type of investing and a little bit different type of situation as compared to purchasing stocks. They mean different things in terms of how they are worked with in the field. Stocks are dealing with things where you're buying ownership in a company, whereas bonds are situations where companies are borrowing money and money's being lent to them in order to do different things and things like that. So they're treated a little bit differently. So hopefully these examples gave you some insight into how to interpret a bond quote and how to do some calculations associated with buying and selling them. If you have any questions, please make sure that you reach out and ask. I'm always happy to help out. Otherwise, thanks for taking some time to watch this video, and I will be sure to catch you in the next video.